Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to The Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Stephany.
And I'm Julia.
We're a mother and a daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Julia.
How are you?
I'm good. I am loving this fall weather.
I know. Today was beautiful.
It was a little windy, which made it chillier than I like for my walk, but yeah, beautiful.
I mean, it is almost the end of October, so it needs to be a little chilly.
It should be chilly. I know, that's true.
Are you drinking anything good today?
I'm drinking, well, we're both drinking the same thing. It's Stash's Sunny Orange Ginger Tea, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice finish from supper.
It is. It is. It's very nice. Playing into the cold weather, I think, with some of that orange and cinnamon and ginger. And drinking out of our Christmas mugs and, the whole thing. Have you done anything fun in fall since we last chatted?
Not really. I purchased some pumpkins, put a wreath on my door. You and I are going to do something fun this Wednesday.
I'm so excited. And it ties right into our conversation, too.
It does. Listeners, we live in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, and we have a lot of historic places. Lancaster is one of the oldest cities in the United States.
It was almost the capital.
It was. We have the oldest market in the country, I believe. It was sanctioned by King George.
Oh.
Yeah, we have the document.
Go us.
Yes. But anyway, we have a historic building called Rockford Plantation. And every fall, or at least this fall, they are doing a tour of the house at night. And they're going to be telling ghost stories because it is purported to be haunted. We've known that. We've done tours there before and they've talked about
I know
how
of at
haunted
least
it is.
one story. And I think they said that there's something down in the cellar, too.
Yeah. So we're going to go and get ourselves scared.
Yeah. And we can have the whole conversation of whether we believe in ghosts or not another time.
Right.
But this is just for Halloween kicks and giggles.
Yeah, just for something fun to do.
Yeah. Get into the Halloween spirit.
Yeah. But that does bring us right into our conversation, doesn't it, Julia?
It does. So today we are sharing some of our favorite ghost stories. You, Mom, your books are not as intense as mine are.
No, I have read scary ghost stories in my life, but I would say mostly when I was younger, a teenager, young adult, I went through kind of a Stephen King phase and just a scary story phase in general. But now that I'm older, I'm not interested in being like terrified like that anymore. But I do love to read books that have ghosts in them. So I have a lot of books tonight that are ghost related, that are spooky or just have like a creepy atmosphere, but aren't necessarily horror. I don't even get to the horror point with them. Yeah. But you have a few.
I do. And I mean, you actually kind of just answered a question that I was going to ask about your relationship with ghost stories. And you kind of just said how you had a period of time where you read more than you do now.
Of real horror, yes.
Yeah. Does that extend to like ghost movies or ghost anything like that?
I do not like to watch scary movies. When I'm much better with a book because I can control in my brain what is happening. But when I'm watching a movie, I have to visually take in whatever is on the screen.
Oh, sure.
And so I don't like jump scares, and I don't like not being able to control the level of scary that I'm taking into my brain through my eyeballs. So I am not a big scary movie lover.
Gotcha.
And you're going to talk about a book in this show that scared me to death. The movie did. Well, we can talk about it then, but it's just that's not my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love reading dark and creepy books, books that make me feel uneasy, that have a sense of dread, especially impending dread or doom. I like that terrified feeling, that thinking something bad is going to happen, but I don't like necessarily being in the midst of the badness happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting how you don't mind stories like that.
Yeah.
But like I don't. I want the straight up ghost story because I know it's resolved at the end. And I'm okay to watch, like there's a handful of ghost movies that I watch maybe once or twice every 3 or 4 years. But I don't really read ghost stories.
Okay.
We've talked about Simone St. James.
Yeah.
She's about really the only one that I can tolerate on a fairly regular basis. And part of that is because I love her to death, but her characters are pretty, it's very plot driven. There's not much character development happening. It's plot. You're done with the book in 2 days.
And atmospheric. She's very good about the atmosphere. Yeah.
Right. So it's just very interesting how this genre to a degree is something that you were okay with.
Yes.
And I am like, I'll touch it for a little bit and then I'm gone. Do you have any personal ghost stories or spooky stories?
No, I do not. I don't have any. No, I have never had any experience where I have encountered anything I would even remotely call a ghost. I have had times in my life where I have felt spooked, but I've done it to myself.
Oh, well, sure.
I have taken the environment that I'm in and made it spooky.
Sure. And that makes sense. I have one very vivid memory. I mean, there are a couple of times that I know that things have happened that have been unexplained, whether it's just because gravity pulled an item down and I didn't see the item fall, or wind blowing doors closed or whatever. Like I've had times like that where things just don't quite line up. But I remember we had come home from dinner. This was a couple years ago. And it was all of us. So we were all still living here.
Okay.
And I don't remember where Mark and Aaron went, but you, Dad, and I were in the kitchen just talking, whatever, as we kind of do. And all of a sudden, Dad's computer started to play music just out of the blue. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Oh my God. We stood around and just looked at each other for like 30 seconds. We're like, we had like, what in the world?
Yeah.
But it was just out of the blue, started playing music.
Right. And that was probably just some kind of technical glitch. But again, we human beings apply meaning to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just remember being like, I don't like that. And just walked away.
I think my belief system, my faith in Jesus keeps me from really buying into ghosts. But I do believe that demons take advantage of our fears and use them in ways to manipulate us. If ghosts are a thing for you, I think it would be possible for a demon to use that in a way that makes you feel like there's a haunting or a ghost going on.
Right.
And that's just my own personal, like, I know I'm weird. I admit it. I have always admitted that I think a little bit left of center, but there are places that do just make you feel a little bit weird.
Culloden was one for us in Scotland.
Yes. Culloden is a battlefield where the Highland clans were pretty much decimated by the English, and walking around on that battlefield, there is definitely a sense.
Yeah, it's
a
like
heaviness of spirit. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's like the Scottish version of Gettysburg. So if you've ever been to Gettysburg
is the same way for me.
It feels so like you don't want to talk too loud.
Right.
Like there's this is a weird way to say it, but you almost feel like the events are happening in time while you're there.
Right. Like there's an overlap of time. You're in the present, but the past is still playing out over and over again. Yes, I do. I agree. I'm just a person who, are we assigning meaning to that because we know what happened? Or is that for real?
I mean, I agree with your philosophy on that. It's a whole conversation, especially with Christians and ghosts and all of that. Ben, my husband, my fabulously smart, intelligent, annoying husband, likes to make the comparison that people who seek out the fear or adrenaline from ghosts or ghost hunting are looking for the same response that pornography would give people.
Right. It's a dopamine surge. Yeah. It's thrill seeking instead of climbing or doing something physically dangerous. Right. They're doing it in a supernatural type of way.
Right. So anytime that I'm watching my silly content creators online who are ghost hunting, he's like, you know what I say about that? So then he just is annoying until I finish watching whatever I want to watch or go elsewhere. But
yeah. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to dive into this. I know we want to get into our very good books. I do believe in thin spaces. I believe there are places in this world where, and I believe in a spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. And maybe I need to make the distinction between ghosts being the representation of people who have died. Okay.
Right.
But I do believe in a spiritual realm. I believe in angels and demons. I believe that God innately is spirit. Mm-hmm. And there are places where you can come close to that in this world that enable you to draw closer to the spiritual world. It's thin spaces is the word that I'm thinking of.
No, I think that's right.
So I do believe that there are places like that, but I'm very skeptical of ghosts as we're going to talk about them tonight.
Right. And to add on that, and then we can get into our books, much like we were talking about with Culloden or Gettysburg, I think that there's also something to be said about places that carry a lot of death to them. It was the same way when I was at Dachau. This very silent, quiet, you felt like you could see the events happening while you were there. Or places that are hundreds of years old. So even to a degree like Skara Brae when we were in Scotland as well. Yeah. Where it just feels like time is just layered on top of itself. I think maybe that is playing into some of that thin space, even to a degree of, I don't want to get too metaphysical or anything, but messing with how we in present day perceive these places or items or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting conversation, and now I feel like we've totally negated everything we're about to say with these ghost stories.
Well, okay. Why do you like ghost stories? Or how do you feel about ghosts in literature?
I don't like to be scared, so I don't read ghost stories often.
Okay.
And it is really only around this time of year that, because it's Halloween, this is when I watch my more spookier movies anyway. So traditional ghost stories aside, is when I'm watching Tim Burton or I'm watching Hocus Pocus or I'm watching things that I wouldn't typically gravitate towards because I want that Halloween thing. So when it comes to books, I don't think I'm so much looking for the ghost as I am that creepy Halloween kind of spooky kind of feeling. And it just tends to be that's where ghosts fall within that.
Right. I feel the same way. And I treat ghosts like I would treat dragons or trolls or fairies. To me, they are a make-believe mystical creature, fantastical, that fits perfectly well into fantasy. So I don't have any issues reading about ghosts or picking stories that have ghosts in them. And you'll see the types of books I'm picking out really supports what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I cannot believe in ghosts or think that they're a real thing, but I can enjoy them in a story. I don't have any issues with that.
One of the other things too that I've been thinking about recently is how things like ghosts or scary movies like Friday the 13th or whatever, how that is desensitizing us to evil. So how maybe some Christian families were so against Harry Potter because it's desensitizing towards witchcraft.
Right.
You
could argue that, yes.
But for me, not that I'm inclined to think that ghosts are real. I know that if it's something that I'm spending my time on, that it is going to numb me towards what some of the more evil capacity of that could be.
Yeah.
And because I am so protective of my sleep and my mental sanity and kind of my peace, I'm very particular about what the ghost stories I read, which is in direct contradiction to the books I'm bringing to the table.
Well, yeah.
But I will say the books that I am going to talk about span almost my entire life. So it's not like I've read them all in the past 2 months. Like do quite a spread. And I did talk about Simone St. James and how she is really the only one I'll read regularly.
Right. And the ghost part of her stories are really only half of it. She's telling something else alongside of it.
It's like a 4-part narration because it's split timeline.
Yes.
And then it's part ghost story, part murder mystery.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's not like I'm reading a straight haunting of any kind. Now that I feel like we've talked through the alphabet about ghosts.
Yes. And so listeners, you know exactly where we stand with ghosts. We are not necessarily believers in ghosts in real life, but we're on board reading about them in books.
Sure. So whether that totally robs us of our credibility in talking about these books, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Well, Mom, what is your first book so we can get this ball rolling?
First of all, before I talk about my first book, I am listing, or I'm going to discuss my books in terms of age. So I'm going to start with the middle grade book and work my way up through to adult books. And you will see that most of my books, well, all of them are not scary, like full on horror. I like ghosts that not only can be scary, but sometimes they are companions for people. Sometimes they're the voice of wisdom in the story. So you'll see that throughout.
Sure.
But the first book I want to bring to the show is called Pony by R.J. Palacio. And I listened to this book as an audiobook. The audio narrator was Ian Hawkins. It's middle grade. The author that wrote this book also wrote the book Wonder, which has been like a sensation. I think there's even been a movie about it.
And that was very much like early 2000s.
Right.
Early to like 2010s.
Contemporary. It was like current day. This is a historical Western. It's a weird story about a young boy whose name is Silas. He's misunderstood and mistreated by kids his age because he can see ghosts. And when he was younger, he told people that and they made fun of him for it.
Sure.
He lives with his father, who is a brilliant man, a brilliant scientist. And he is learning how to do a particular type of photography, and his son is helping him. One day, a group of bandits shows up and they kidnap his father because they think he is somebody he is not. There's a case of mistaken identity, but they want him to counterfeit money for them. And they think he can do it.
Okay.
So the father is afraid for his son. He's afraid if he doesn't go, they'll do something to his son. So he goes with them and he tells Silas to stay home and he'll be back. Well, you know how that goes.
Right, yeah.
So he doesn't stay.
Of course.
Silas has a ghost friend named Mittenwool, and the two of them go on this adventure. And then the third character in this story that's really important is a horse that he calls Pony. And Pony seems to have some very special abilities too throughout the story. So you just follow Silas as he looks for his dad. And in the process, a mystery is solved. Silas gets a lot of answers about his mother who has died and who Mittenwool really is. So it's a delightful story. It's beautifully written. It's engaging. It's very tense in parts. It's mysterious. And I loved every minute of it. It was a 5-star read for me earlier this year.
So it sounds like a heartwarming ghost story.
It is. And the other thing with middle grade, you always know, number one, you're going to get an ending where everything is tied together.
Yeah.
And it's going to generally be mostly happy. So you can go into this story knowing that the author's going to bring you through and it's going to be okay. Yeah. But there are some really rough, difficult times in this book. But lots of ghosts. Not just Mittenwool. There's other stuff going on. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my first book, Pony by R.J. Palacio. What do you want to tell us about, Julia?
So full disclosure, my first book was an audiobook that we listened to, 10, 12 years ago?
I don't know how many. Time. It would have been when we were all driving around together in the same vehicle.
Easily, comfortably.
And we were listening to things with CD.
Yeah.
So that would have been
at least
quite
12
some
years
time
ago.
ago. Yeah.
So this is Seer of Shadows by Avi. And Avi was a pretty popular writer when I was growing up in elementary school, and I read quite a few of his books.
I would say you were probably only in middle school when we listened to this.
I think it was earlier than that.
Yeah.
Because I had read quite a few of his books before we listened to this, but I wasn't quite yet. I still think this might have been a little too heavy for where I was at, which makes me think I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
Which means Mark and Aaron were very, very...
Yes. Yeah. And I'm the one who brought the book, and we all listened to it as we were driving around in the car running our errands.
Yeah. Seer of Shadows. The story takes place around the time when photography is kind of beginning in the late 1800s. And this story is set specifically in New York City. Horace Carpentine is an apprentice to Enoch Middleditch. Just try saying those names like 5 times fast, who is a photographer and who's taking photographs for the rich clients, if you will. And he is invited to Mrs. Friedrich von Macht.
A German lady.
He's invited to her house to take some family portraits.
Yeah.
And as Horace's photos are developing, he's seeing within these portraits an image of a girl who's not there. And he comes to find out that it's the actual real likeness of Mr. Van Macht's dead daughter. And her name is Eleonora. And as Horace and Peg, a servant girl in this household, kind of begin to investigate and take more photographs, they begin to find out that Eleonora is very angry and is becoming, with each photograph, she's becoming more and more real. What I just remember about this book specifically was the anger at the end of the book. I think that there's definitely, I have this memory in my mind of Eleonora with a candlestick walking around. I think this was my first real true, this might have been around the time that I was reading my first true ghost stories. And so I just remember it being very spooky.
It was very spooky.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about spook for spook's sake, but then an angry spook. Like I feel like that's just scarier.
Yeah, because they feel out of control and harm can really be done.
Right. One of the words that was used in this Goodreads kind of breakdown is vengeance and vengeful.
Right.
And that just gets scary when you throw that in with spirits. And this is such an interesting time in history anyway, because the emergence of photography.
Yes.
How photos were revealed dependent on the lenses or the exposure.
The light.
Right. And then ghost photos actually became a thing that came out of this period of time. Yeah. So apart from the actual scary ghost story, I just remember the atmosphere being very heavy with the photography and there being extended sections in the story about the film and about the plates and talking about the photography process. And I think what I found through writing my list is the ghost story for me is even more important. Like it's even more powerful if it's mixed in with a good atmosphere and a good environment. And I think Seer of Shadows did that very well. Yeah.
I mean, I listened to it as an adult and thoroughly enjoyed it. I did not get the impression from you or your brothers that you were so scared that you were not able to stay by yourself or sleep at night.
Yeah.
We all enjoyed it. I do remember that. And I do remember asking everybody, are we all okay? Is everybody okay? Yeah. I would reread that. That was a good ghost story.
Yeah, it's on my reread list for sure.
Yeah.
And Avi is a good writer to begin with. I've read quite a few of, I said that before, but
he was very popular for school reading when you guys were in elementary school.
Yeah. And he writes stories that are not, they take unique perspectives in the story or examine unusual storylines. So, yeah, very good. That was my first. It's my toe dipper into my intense list.
That was a good way to start.
Yeah. What's your second, Mom?
My second book, we are moving now into YA, but I would say that this is a young YA book that mature middle graders could definitely read. It's called City of Ghosts by V.E. Schwab. And it is about a girl who can cross the veil. So she can actually move from the living world to the world of the dead.
Oh, okay.
And the reason she can do that is she drowned and was brought back to life. And when she was brought back, she had this gift to be able to cross back and forth. She is a only child, and she travels with her parents. They do documentaries. And I believe the documentaries have to do with the supernatural, but it's been a little while since I read this, and I don't remember exactly what her parents are making movies of, but I do think it's something along those lines. So this book is set in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I love Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful city. It's also a very haunted city.
Yes.
We did not get the chance to investigate that very much when we were there. We only had a couple days in Edinburgh, but the city itself is gorgeous, and it just lends a very atmospheric background. While Cass is in Edinburgh, she crosses over to the other side, and she meets a very particular vengeful spirit who steals something from her. And it becomes a very, very high stakes book. So it's intense, and it's also very atmospheric. A lot of the time it's happening in a graveyard. She meets another girl who can do what she does. She has a ghost friend. So it's just really, it's a great spooky book for this time of year. If you're like me and don't really want to do full-on horror, this scratches the itch without making you feel like you don't want to be by yourself at night, or you're having trouble falling asleep.
Right. Or that you can't read at night because it's all ghost stories.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it spoopy because it has themes, like scary themes, but it's not horror. And again, it's young adult, but bordering on middle grade, I think. And so you get all the satisfaction with those types of books at the end.
Sure.
This is the first in a series. So if you really like it, you can follow Cassidy, I think, around the world. They go to different cities. I think the second book, now again, I'm going to say something that's probably not true. I think the second book is based in the catacombs in Paris.
Oh, that's just right up spooky.
Yeah. So that's my second.
Yeah.
My second suggestion for a ghost story that's ghosty but not crazy, terrifying.
Yeah. And I've never read any V.E. Schwab, and she is slowly making her way very solidly onto my TBR list.
I've read a couple of her books now. One I was okay with, but two I have really, really enjoyed. I'm actually going to talk about another one next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So before I do that, what do you want to tell us about, Julia?
Drowning.
Oh, okay.
So my next book is Deep and Dark and Dangerous by Mary Downing Hahn. Again, this one falls in that same time with Seer and Shadows. Seer
for
of
you,
Shadows.
You mean for your reading.
In the same age bracket when I was reading those stories. I also read another one by Mary Downing Hahn, Wait Till Helen Comes. And as I was writing out Deep and Dark and Dangerous here for the script, I was remembering a lot of When Helen Comes as well. So it was a very interesting callback to some scary reading. But so Deep and Dark and Dangerous is the story of Allie, who is 13, and she ends up finding a photograph of 3 people who she knows is her mom and her aunt when they were younger. And the third person is ripped out of the photograph. And she becomes very curious about this. And so she asks her mom if she can spend the summer with her aunt and her cousin in Maine, which is where the family had a vacation house. And there was a lot of summertime things happening there. When she gets there, she's spending time with her aunt and her cousin, Emma. And while they're doing summer things, they meet a little girl named Sissy. And Sissy is very mean and spiteful and begins to be a bad influence on Emma, who Emma is only like 6 or 7.
Okay.
And this kind of builds to the point where Allie is trying to get adults involved, and the adults have their own stuff going on that they don't get involved. And Sissy is now saying that she knows who this third person in the photograph is, but won't tell them at all. And then eventually she brings them out into the water and tries to show them. This is another angry ghost story. It also has to do with water. And if you've heard me talk about water at all, you know that's a no-no. So I wonder if this is where my fear of water came from.
Maybe. I mean, maybe that was the start.
You know what? The title, the cover of this book is a doll's face in the water. So that's probably
That's
exactly
creepy. Yeah.
This was very scary for me to read. And again, I might have been 12 or 13 reading this. And I knew, I don't want to give anything away, but I knew what Sissy was doing in the story. And yet I knew it was building up to this scary thing. And as it was unfolding, I was just really stressed and really scared. But it is a middle grade. And so things do kind of end and they do kind of settle. I know a lot of people have kind of compared this to Wait Till Helen Comes in terms of general plot structure. And I would kind of say that I agree with that to a degree. But there is something to be said about scary, spooky water stories, which are they just take it over the edge.
I agree, especially if, drowning was involved, because I just think that is not. Yeah. That's a hard way to die. And traumatic.
Yeah.
I read another Mary Downing Hahn book called Wait Till Helen Comes. I think in that book, there was a girl who died in a fire, I think. Yes. And she is haunting the kids that move into the house. Yeah. And I read that as an adult, and I felt like that was pretty darn scary for kids to be reading.
Yeah.
I mean, my bar is low.
Oh, sure.
But I just thought, wow, elementary school kids are reading this and they're all okay with it.
No, we're not okay. I will say, though, these both Wait Till Helen Comes and Deep and Dark and Dangerous do have to deal with a degree of, I don't want to give too much away, but of attempting to kill other people. And so if that's not something
to harm people.
Yes. Yeah. And if that's not something you like with your ghost stories, I would stay away. But that is an element in both of these books.
Yeah.
Okay. Is your next one lighter?
It's different.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to bring another V.E. Schwab book to the show today. I just finished reading this. It is called Gallant. It is another young adult book. I would say it's more of just your standard young adult. So good for teens. It is about a young girl, maybe 12, 13, 14, who I'd say maybe 14, who has lived her whole life in a school for girls. She was dropped off when she was 2 because her parents have died. And the only thing she has to let her know who her mother was and her father is her mother's journal. And when she reads through it, it just seems like her mother has gone mad over the course of time. So she doesn't even know if her mother is dead or just missing. The girl's name is Olivia Pryor, and her description kind of reminds me of Wednesday Addams. She's dark. She has dark hair. She has gray eyes. She's very pale. She has to wear gray dresses. That's the uniform for the school. She is not Wednesday Addams so much in character.
Sure.
She's an artist. She loves color. She loves the natural world. She really wants to know what her family history is. She wants to belong somewhere. She wants people who love her and care about her, and she can care about them. But she also has a very special gift. She can see ghosts. Now, in the book, they're not called ghosts. They're called ghouls. But they're not ghouls in the traditional sense. They are absolutely described as shades or ghosts. Now, she can't always see the whole image of somebody. She can just see parts of them. But she is able to see people from beyond the grave.
Sure.
So that is her special skill. She gets a letter one day at this orphanage or this school for girls that tells her that she does have a home. It's called Gallant, and they would love for her to come and stay. They've been looking for her. They miss her, and they want to get to know her. So she packs up and goes to Gallant. When she gets there, she realizes there's something not right because she shows up and the people who live in the home aren't expecting her.
Oh.
But they are her family.
Oh.
And so the story goes from there. And she learns this whole history of Gallant, and that's where the ghosts come in. And there's a character in this book that's deaf.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So it's quite a mashup for me. I would say it parallels the storytelling of Coraline by Neil Gaiman. There's a little bit of The Secret Garden in here. You get the feel of Jane Eyre when she's in the boarding school for the first part. Like there's a very strong sense of that. And if any of our listeners have ever heard of or read The Hazelwood, feels very much like that as well.
Okay.
So that's all I'm going to say about it. Beautifully written. The narrator, I listened to this, was superb. His name is Julian Rhind-Tutt. He has that kind of spooky voice, just British accent, very cultured, but just makes you feel just a little, I don't know, on edge.
A little twitchy.
Yes. Yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was so well written. Perfect vibes, extremely atmospheric and ghosty. Highly recommend.
No, it sounds very good.
I think you would like it, Julia.
Yeah.
I just think it's the type of book that you would pick up and really enjoy.
Probably. I know I've picked it up a couple of times in the past at like Barnes & Noble or something.
And looked at it.
Yeah, and read the cover and was like, maybe, and then never did. So
The book has ink drawings for illustrations too, which are cool.
Yeah.
It definitely fits with the vibe of the book.
Very cool.
So not scary, definitely creepy.
Sure.
So do you have another scary book for us?
I do. It is time that Simone St. James takes center stage.
Yes. I wondered when we were going to get to her.
So I guess I should probably say that if you haven't caught on yet, listeners, I'm going from not as creepy to very creepy.
Okay.
So.
Well, you were pretty creepy to start.
I know, but you also know what's coming last.
I do, yeah.
So I've read 3. Nope. I am reading my 3rd. Am I?
Yes. Simone St. James.
Yes. So I have read The Broken Girls. I have read Sundown Motel. I am now in the middle of the book of Cold Cases and like actually smack dab in the middle of the book.
Are you enjoying that?
I'm actually going to talk about that in a second.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Yes, you did. But the one I want to bring to the table, I am going to talk about Book of Cold Cases, but the Sundown Motel for me has been her spookiest so far. As we mentioned earlier, Simone St. James writes stories that are split timeline. So back in the past and then in the present, generally about 2 different women. And then it's also a ghost story and a murder mystery. So if you can keep that all straight in your head, the stories are fun.
Yeah. They're very fun.
They are. Sundown Motel is the story of Viv Delaney, whose aunt was working at the Sundown Motel in the 80s and then goes missing. And so she decides, because of some other stuff going on in her family, that she's going to go to the motel and work and see if she can figure out what's going on. And as she is there, as she is working, now the Sundown Motel is like your stereotypical pay per hour, kind of seedy, you know that maybe drug deals are happening or stuff is happening. Yeah. In the rooms. And so it innately already feels kind of
sleazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Viv is working the overnight shift. So you already have an idea of what that's going to be like, right? You're working the overnight at a motel where people come and go and it's just weird. And then the hotel is also set back off of a road, kind of a little in the woods. That's not the perfect setting. I don't know what is.
Yeah.
As Viv is working these night shifts, she notices things start to happen. People are coming in and out of the office that she then can't track in any of the rooms. Yeah. Doors are opening on
and
their
closing.
Own.
Yeah.
Which was probably the scariest image.
Yes. Of doors flinging open and then closing again.
Well, but how the covers picture the office is not connected to the building. So it's a big old like L. And for the room doors to just swing open into black. Nope. I would have gone. I would have gone by. Gone by.
The smell of smoke.
Yes.
Yeah. Cigarette smoke, not like the building burning.
Right. The big light on the big sign going out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
atmosphere.
Yes.
She does that so well.
Man.
She does that spooky, creepy feeling.
Man.
Makes the tingles go up your spine.
Yeah. And I've gotten in the habit that when I'm reading her, I put my back against the wall. So I know that there's nothing behind me.
The hairs stand up on the back of your neck.
Weirded out just sitting here because there's this big open basement behind us.
But see, I do. I love that. I absolutely love that. I just don't like horror. I don't like body horror. I don't like jump scares for the most part.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Well, Viv is...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. I think I needed a little bit of a break. I was clearly getting stressed. Well, Viv is working these night shifts. She's also piecing together her aunt's disappearance. And at the same time this is happening, you get her aunt's story of what's going on. And you find out that there's probably a serial killer that now the aunt is tracking down. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's complicated.
This book I read at the beach last year, and I actually finished it in the middle of the week, and I had to at like 2:00 in the morning. And I got spooked sleeping in this room that I had slept in so many nights in a row. I had to physically tell myself, you have been safe the past 3 nights. Close your eyes and go to sleep.
It's fine.
Yes. Nothing is here suddenly now because you finished the book. Go to sleep.
And you're not in a seedy motel. No. You're in a nice beach house.
And my husband is right beside me, and he doesn't give a crap about ghosts, so chill out.
That's a good ghost story if you have to tell yourself that.
And then I woke up annoyed the next morning. So that one is really good. And they read super fast. So if you start reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is too much, but it's really good. Literally, it's 36 hours max. And you're done. They read very fast.
They're very propulsive.
Yes.
She has a new one coming out, I think early 2024 called Murder Road. And I think it's going to be the same basic setup, 2 timeline, a little ghosty, supernatural stuff, but a murder mystery or a serial killer going on.
Yeah. So I'm in the middle of Book of Cold Cases. And this one is supposedly about a female serial killer.
Ooh.
And the main character, I forget, Shay, is a cold case blogger in her personal life.
Right. It's her side hustle.
Yes.
Okay.
And this supposed female serial killer happens to come into her work one day, and Shay asks for an interview. And now the timeline is splitting between, is this woman doing it, and Shay and everything that's happening there. And the house that the supposed serial killer lives in is like haunted to the top.
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away because I am in the middle of reading it, but it involves recordings, like recorded interviews disappearing, things being heard on the recording that you didn't hear elsewhere, cabinet doors in the kitchen flying wide open. The other thing that Simone St. James does as well is she does the ghost, but then she also does physical representation of memories too. So there's a lot of that happening. I'm at the point where I can no longer read this book at night, which means I have to read it on the weekends. So
you could get up extra early and read it in the morning. Julia's giving me a dirty look.
Did I not say at the beginning I'm protective of my sleep? But it is very good, and I will say it is very good when I finished it.
I can't wait to read it. I'm looking forward to it. I do have the book.
Okay.
I just haven't picked it up yet.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
Okay. I'm going to bring us back a little.
Yes.
We're going to calm it down. We're going to take it away from the scary. And I want to talk about The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton.
Okay.
I love Kate Morton. She does historical fiction, always does 2 timelines. So she does a present day timeline and then a timeline in the past, and they eventually converge. The Clockmaker's Daughter, I think, is her least favorite book. And I think it's because the main narrator, is a ghost. And she is actually the focus of the story. And the book starts out by the very first line is, my real name no one remembers, the truth about that summer no one else knows. And that's how the story starts. And then you're following her in present day, and you're also following this story of this group of people in the past. She's not the only ghost.
Okay.
there is a mystery not involved with her that took place, plus what happened to her is also in the story.
Gotcha.
So this is not scary, but it is a ghost story, and she is haunting a particular place. She's just not doing it in any kind of scary way.
Sure.
Kate Morton is a great writer. I love her books. I love the historical aspect. There's always there's always an interesting twist or something unusual in her stories. There's some romantic elements, but they're never the focus. I'm not putting a good spin on her writing, but I just love it. I think she's a great writer. She writes beautifully. I always enjoy reading, and her stories are always really, really engaging.
Okay. Gotcha.
She's almost like, it's gothic without being gothic. I don't know how else to say. Like there's always some kind of mystery and a little bit of sadness, like bittersweet stuff going on.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm doing a horrible job, but it's a great book, and it is a ghost story.
Yeah, I mean, you even just said how it opens. Like that does sound very bittersweet and very, very like there is an undertone of sadness or melancholy to it.
Yeah, I mean, my Goodreads little note that I it's private. I don't post publicly on Goodreads, so don't follow me on Goodreads because it's not helpful. I mean, you'll get to see my ratings for books, but that's about it. But for myself, I wrote, I really, really enjoyed this story. It's a slow unraveling of an old mystery, and it's impeccably told. I loved the ghost Birdie as one of the narrators, the house as a character, and the different timelines and storylines that overlapped occasionally. It's a book to be savored and not rushed through. It's not rated nearly as well as Kate Morton's other books, mostly because of the very things I enjoyed about it. Looked forward to immersing myself in the story and listening to the talented audio narrator. So I did listen to this as an audio book, and the narrator is Joanna Froggatt. But I highly recommend this as a ghost story, but Kate Morton as a storyteller is just very, very talented. She's Australian.
Yeah, and you have a lot of her books upstairs.
I think I have them all.
So the narrator mom for that, do you know who she is?
No. Oh. Oh my word, she's the maid in Downton Abbey.
What's her name? Anna?
I think
so.
Anna.
And what's his name?
Yeah, not the butler. No, he's the valet.
Yes.
Yeah, for the Lord.
We are stumbling over all of it.
I know, but oh my word, I did not put two and two together.
I just saw the name and I'm like, I recognize that.
Well, she did a great job.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that. Good. The Clockmaker's Daughter is the only Kate Morton I've listened to. I've read all of her other ones.
Okay.
I have not read her newest one yet. I'm waiting to savor it. Sure. I'm saving it for like a rainy day.
Yeah,
but
this
is a good one for a ghost story. If you don't want to be scared, but you like to read about ghosts.
Gotcha. It almost sounds like, and it's probably not comparable to the same degree, but like Other Birds, of like that same level of not scary ghosts, but there's ghosts.
There's supernatural stuff going on. Yeah. I mean, there's a murder mystery here. That's not necessarily related to the ghost part of it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Any other books?
I do. Yes. I'm bracing myself for this because it does make me spooked to talk about it, which maybe I never should have read it in the first place if that's how I handle it now. I don't know.
I think you're pretty brave. This is a book I would not have picked up.
So, okay. It's The Woman in Black by Susan Hill.
Yes.
This is less than 200 pages. It is short and wow. In full disclosure, I watched the movie first before I even knew there was a book.
And I watched it with you.
Yes.
And I screamed at the top of my lungs.
First, let me say this. I am not somebody who I will see a trailer for a ghost movie and like, oh, I want to see that. Daniel Radcliffe was in this, and I was coming out of watching Harry Potter. So I was like, oh, I know him as an actor. It looks interesting.
Yeah, what possessed the three of us? Because Mark watched it with us. We wanted to see this movie so bad.
And all of us screamed.
Well, I could barely keep my eyes open. And I do remember full belly screaming at one part.
I remember hearing Dad upstairs just laughing. It was so rude.
Anyway, go ahead. Tell us about the book.
So I will say this is the one ghost movie that is a regular, like if I'm going to rewatch any ghost story, this is the one I watch because I know what happens.
Right. It's not scary.
Well, no, I still know where all the jump scares are. It still gets me every time, but it's like The Others. I know The Others movie and with Nicole Kidman, and it still gets me.
Oh, I love The Others.
Right.
Yeah.
But like those are the two that if I'm going to watch a scary movie and I'm in for it and I'm going to deal with all of the
trauma,
scary sweats and everything, those are the two that I will put and it's like once every 3 or 4 years. Anyway, I picked up this book after watching the movie because I think if you're going to watch a movie and then you know that there's a book, you should at least give the book a chance because you're going to get information that you
didn't get in the movie.
Right. So this story is about Arthur Kipp, who is a solicitor who is being sent out to the English moors to handle the estate of a Mrs. Alice Drablow who has just passed. I probably should have said this at the beginning. This deals with children and pretty heavily. Mm-hmm. Arthur lost his wife in childbirth, and he has his young son, I believe. So he goes out to the moors, and Eelmarsh House is the house for the estate that he has to take care of. Now, the thing about this house and the thing about the atmosphere is it is in your stereotypical English moor village, foggy, cloudy, gloomy, whatever. And the Eelmarsh House is set on off of a causeway. Mm-hmm. So it is just this house on this island. And you have to time it with the tides to get to and from the house. So if you don't time it right, you'll either get stuck on the land or stuck on the island. And Arthur is finding that when he's mentioning what he's there to do when he's in town, people are avoiding him like the plague. And they're not telling him why. So he goes to the house to start working on the estate. And strange things start happening. He then sees a woman dressed in black mourning. And I should mention this is Victorian, too.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
Why not? Add all of the check boxes.
Yeah, very gothic.
Yes. So he sees this woman in pure Victorian mourning. And he initially is like, well, let me try to talk to her. Let me see what's going on. Maybe she knows something that will help me. And then he can't find her. So when he returns to town every night, awful things start happening to the kids in the town. And
oh, I completely forgot that part. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one night he just decides that he's going to stay at the house, finish the estate, and be done. He just be done and go home. And stuff hits the fan.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much because I don't want to.
Yeah.
And if you've watched the movie, you kind of know what's coming. But what I remember most about this book is, well, there's a nursery, and like I said, it deals with children. And so in a nursery, there's a rocking chair. And I remember reading this book in school in the middle of the day in my Italian class, no less, reading the scene where Susan Hill is talking about this rocking chair moving on its own. And it freaked me out so bad. So bad. I think it was my first real true, so Seer of Shadows, all of that was scary.
Right.
But this was my first real introduction to the nuance of writing scary
horror
ghost stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There is significant tragedy that happens in this book. And some personal tragedy that happens to Arthur.
Right.
But this is a scary story.
Yeah.
Scary story. I don't know what else to say.
Right. It is a true ghost story in the real sense of the word when you read the definition on Merriam-Webster. Yeah.
I was going to reread it this year and I was like, nope, it's not time yet. We're not doing that yet.
You have to work yourself up to it. A couple more years have to pass before you can pick up the book.
And I have to bookend it with Garlic and the Vampire and Fangs, and I'm going to watch Twitches on the Disney. I have to bookend it with
and Hocus Pocus. Yeah.
Right? It has to be surrounded with lots of other good things. I have to read in the middle of the day. But it is really short. And so if it's a book that like Simone St. James, that you're interested in reading, that it's good, and you just need to
appealing.
Take breaks, it does go super fast. I'm getting the fear sweats just talking about this book. My neck is all warm. My face is sweaty.
Should I give us one more book
to
talk about? Help you focus on something else? I have one more book I want to talk about. And this book was suggested to me by my mom, Jo Hart, who we had on the show in our first 3 Peas in a Pod episode. She's a huge reader.
The OG book snug.
Yeah. The OG book snugger. Yeah. She, it surprises me that she recommended this book to me, because when I think about this book, I don't really think it would be a book that she would enjoy, but she did really enjoy it. It's a book that has ghosts in it. It has very dark humor, and it does have some violence. So I'm putting that out there right away for everybody to know, so that if this book sounds interesting to you, you have an idea of what you're getting into. It's called Himself by Jess Kidd. And again, I listened to this as an audiobook, and it is narrated by Aidan Kelly. Jess Kidd is an Irish author, and so this story is based in Ireland. All of the characters are Irish. It was very helpful for me to listen to the audiobook, because I got to hear how some of the names were pronounced, which I would not have done correctly on my own. The main character's name is Mayani. He is an orphan. He grew up in an orphanage. He finds out that his mother might have died by dastardly means. And so he makes his way back to the place where he was born. It's a little town called Mulderig. And I think the story must be based in like the early 1970s, because when Mayani is described, he's wearing bell bottoms that are like 2 feet wide. And it's actually a joke. But he's a very good looking man, kind of has an attitude, like he knows it. He can also see ghosts. And in this story, the ghosts are helping him, for the most part, figure out what happened to his mother. There's, like I said, a ton of dark humor. There are some very touching parts. There are characters in this story that are just so unique. You will remember them forever. And then the mystery part of it gets pretty gruesome. Like there are some gruesome parts. So just keep that in mind. But I loved this book. I loved the weirdness of it. I loved the kind of fairy tale feel of it. I loved how the ghosts, and it's not just ghosts, there are other supernatural things that are happening in this story. So it has a real feel of magical realism or the fantastical. You like Mayani. He's kind of a ne'er-do-well, but he's a likable one. You can't help but like him. Women love him. He has this sexual charisma that nobody can resist. And because of that, the priest in the town is beside himself. So it was just a really good, fun read. And I felt like very satisfying. The mystery was satisfying. What happened with that was satisfying. And I really liked it. And I love Jess Kidd's writing. So highly recommend that one too. And I recommend it as an audiobook. At least the first time you read it.
Sure. And it sounds fun. Honestly, that's a much better note to end on than The Woman in Black.
Well, we covered a lot of ground with our ghost stories. And we did go from friendly ghosts all the way up to horrifying ghosts. Yeah.
Speaking of vengeful ghosts, I feel like that's been my theme throughout. I don't know. Maybe that's something I need to like
check
out with somebody about. I don't know.
Psychologically evaluate. Listeners, I hope you just enjoyed our discussion today. And
I hope we didn't scare you off.
Right. I actually hope we encouraged you to maybe pick up a book that has a ghost of some kind in it. And if you have any ghost stories you think we would enjoy, we would love to hear about them. You can tell us about it If you listen to us on Spotify, you can actually leave comments. You can comment on Facebook or Instagram and let us know if you have any ghost stories you think we would like, judging from the books that we've brought to the show today.
Please recommend lighter ones to me, please. I need a break.
We also want to let you know that our next episode is our 1-year anniversary episode, which even as I'm saying the words, I can't believe it.
I know.
That we've been doing this for a year. It's gone so quickly. We've had so much fun.
And that we still like doing it.
Yes. And we are just tickled that you continue to join us here in the Book Snug and listen to us blabber about ghosts.
Put up with our nonsense.
Right? Yeah. We also want to ask, if you're enjoying the show and you're feeling so moved, if you would like to rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we would love that. We would appreciate it so much. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. We want you to just keep coming back and spending time with us here. But you could spread the word with your readerly friends and let us know that we do this little casual, laid-back podcast about books. We'd love to have more people join us.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending part of your day with us here in the Book Snug as we talked about spooky and not so spooky ghost stories. And we hope that you will come back again to the Book Snug in our next chapter and celebrate our 1-year anniversary with us.
Bye, friends. We'd love for you to continue today's conversation with us at the BookSnug_podcast on Instagram and at the Book Snug Podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." And we wholeheartedly agree.